Hi, this is Brian. I'm here with another demonstration of Flexi-deck, a new advanced automation tool. In this demo, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the advanced UI element editor with Logic Pro X. I've got a Logic project open with 3 audio tracks and 3 audio instrument tracks, and each track has a different number of audio effects plugins. In one of the previous videos, I showed you how you can use Flexi-deck to create a macro that adds several plugins to the selected track in Logic Pro X. However, that macro had an important limitation. It can only add those plugins to a track that was empty. I can quickly demonstrate why. I've got a macro set up for opening the FX plugin pop-up menu. In it, I will add a click action and set it to the portion of Logic's user interface that opens that menu. When I try running the action, you can see it opens the menu as intended. But let's switch to another audio track. This one already has several plugins added to it. Look what happens when I run the action now. It clicks, but not in the right spot. This is because adding a plugin causes Logic to change the arrangement of its user interface. Now the area we want to click has been restructured, and the UI element we set up doesn't specify the right on-screen element anymore. So what I'm going to show is how you can use the advanced UI element editor to create a macro that adds a specific plugin to the end of the selected track, regardless of how many plugins it already has. First, I will open the advanced UI element editor. Before I go into which each part of this window is used for, let's see what happens when I click the Highlight Overall Match button in the upper right corner. This button highlights the on-screen UI element that currently matches everything we've specified in this window. You can see it's not matching what we want. But if I switch the current track in Logic back to the first one, it matches correctly again. One way I can try to address this is to change the UI element to use strict matching. This way, it can only match on-screen UI elements that look like an exact match to what we originally picked. And while that works for the first track, when I select the second one, we see a red question mark next to the mouse cursor, meaning that it no longer matches anything. So we have more work to do. Fortunately, I can add another UI element to this list. I'll pick the area of the screen we want to click for this track. With more than one UI element in the list, Flexi-deck will go through them in order trying to find a match. While the first element in the list didn't match, as you can see, this second one does. And when I switch back to the first track, we see that it's still matching the correct region. Better still, if I switch to our third track, that has even more plugins added to it, it still matches correctly. But what happens if I switch to an audio instrument track? That's not right. That region is used for adding sends, not plugins. Don't worry though, because we can do better. To address this, first I'm going to show how to check which of the 2 UI elements in the list is matching improperly. If I select the first one and click Highlight Match from List, Flexi-deck will now highlight only the on-screen elements that match the UI element that's currently selected in the list, in this case the first one. You can see I'm getting the red question mark again, so it's not the culprit. If I select the second element in the list, it starts highlighting the incorrect region of the screen again, so this is the one that needs to be fixed. I could also try setting the second UI element to strict matching, but again, it only works on one track. Wouldn't it be great if it worked with any track? This is where custom matching comes in. I can use it to see the entire hierarchy of sub-elements that make up the UI element in my list, and I can choose which of those attributes Flexi-deck will consider when looking for a match. If I click the Highlight Match from Hierarchy button, then Flexi-deck will highlight the matching sub-element that I have selected in the hierarchy list. I can use this to drill down through Logic's UI element hierarchy to see where things are matching incorrectly. The channel strip group sub-element doesn't match, and I can see that Flexi-deck is looking for it to have a value of echo strum for its description attribute. That'll only work for one track, so let's change it. Setting it to use child index instead means that it will select the first channel strip in this group, and now it's working. Note that if I change the child index to 1, it selects the second one, but let's keep it at 0. And as I select the last few sub-elements, I can see that it's highlighting what I want. Now we've got things working for our first 3 audio tracks, but not our software instrument track. Let's try adding another UI element to the list that specifies the right place to click for that track. Once I've added it, and click Highlight Match from List to check which elements it currently will match, I can see it matches incorrectly for the latter two audio instrument tracks. This is very similar to what we just did with the audio tracks, so I'm going to set this one to strict matching as well. Now I'm back to getting a red question mark for the last two tracks again, so let's add one more UI element for these tracks, set it to custom matching, and make sure it'll work on any track, not just one called 70s Analog Lead. Let's see what happens when I click Highlight Overall Match Now. As I click through the tracks, you can see it always highlights the correct area for it to click. This means I'm done configuring this action for now. In another folder in my macro library, I've already set up a few other macros for adding a gain and channel EQ plugin. You can see they use the macro we were just working on. I've also set up a menu for triggering them, which I will open now. So thanks to the OpenFX plugin macro, you can see that no matter which track I have selected, I can press these buttons to add either a gain or EQ. I could use this same method to allow editing the selected track in a variety of other ways, and not have to worry about whether or not this track is in the correct configuration for it to work. That concludes this demo. I hope that you now have a good idea of what sorts of things are possible when you use the Advanced UI Element Editor.